Ark's third eye widened in shock. "You drank that?" He sputtered, his tendrils quivering across the sterile lab table. Jackson grinned, tipping the emptied vial in Arn's direction. The human's casual nod seemed almost mocking in its simplicity. "Yeah, tasted awful," Jackson said, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. He glanced around at the ring of onlookers. A kaleidoscope of scales, fur, and skeletons, all frozen in a tableau of disbelief. The room was silent, the gravity of what just happened sinking into each observer like an anchor in deep space. "Impossible," whispered Chalk, the Galorian biologist whose green caras shimmered under the bright lab lights. "That toxin neutralizes every known neuroreceptor." His multi-faced eyes darted from Jackson to the now empty vial as if expecting it to start glowing or explode. "Well," Jackson said with a shrug. "Not mine." Apparently, Mira's Ridge, the interstellar research hub where alien academia collided and thrived, was not used to surprises. This was a place of ordered discovery where breakthroughs were plotted, dissected, and then replicated with predictable outcomes. But Jackson had just upended the sanctity of this order by surviving something that, by every standard of galactic science, should have killed him in less than 30 standard units. AR tendrils twitched in a pattern that indicated rising concern. "Human, that dose was synthesized from the sand bloom," he said, almost stuttering. "It's the most lethal neurotoxin cataloged. One molecule disrupts synaptic pathways in every sentient species. Even the Callans succumb in seconds." Jackson's grin only broadened. "Guess it's a good thing I'm not a Callian." He looked at the cluster of stunned faces and raised an eyebrow. "Is this not part of the research? I thought we were testing resilience thresholds." Chalk's mandibles clicked nervously, an odd sound that echoed in the sterile expanse of the lab. "We were testing samples, yes. But not." He paused, unable to find the right words. "Not on living subjects." Jackson gave an indifferent shrug. He had grown accustomed to the mix of horror and curiosity in alien gazes ever since he'd stepped into this facility. Deathworlders, as humans were infamously labeled, were whispered about more than studied. Most researchers treated the term as an abstract concept, a classification reserved for those species hailing from planets where survival was a relentless war against physics, biology, and fate itself. But for Jackson, this was just Tuesday. Arnik tried to regain composure. "We need to run diagnostics immediately," he said, directing his assistants with a flick of his three-fingered hand. A pair of Kellians shuffled forward, their thin, segmented arms twitching in barely contained panic. "Wouldn't worry too much," Jackson said, eyeing the scanners with mild interest. "Feels like I just had a shot of that dreadful moonshine my uncle used to make." Chark couldn't hide his exasperation. "Your moonshine must be highly toxic." Jackson snickered. "Oh, it is knocked out a horse." Once the alien scientists exchanged glances, the sort that spoke of uncharted equations and reports needing complete rewrites. The Kellian scanners beeped in words, spitting out streams of data that only deepened their confusion. "All vital signs nominal," reported one Kellan. Eyes fixed on the glowing hollow screen, neural activity unchanged. "ARX tendrils froze mid-air." "Impossible," he repeated, though the word now sounded weaker, like it had lost its foothold in the realm of logic. He pivoted to Jackson. "What mechanisms could possibly protect you from such mechanisms?" Jackson repeated, his grin fading into something more reflective. "Oh, I don't know. Human biology is a mystery, even to us. Maybe it's something in the liver, or maybe our nerves are just stubborn." Chalk's mandibles clicked again, this time in a thoughtful pattern. The silence stretched as every being in the room reevaluated not only their theories, but the creature standing before them, who defied them all with a casual smile. Jackson leaned back against the lab table, looking at the swirling constellations projected on the ceiling, each speck a testament to the galaxies that thought they had everything figured out. He knew this moment would ripple through the corridors of Mira's Ridge and beyond, so he said, finally breaking the silence, "Are we going to move on to the next test?" Or what Arnik blinked, a rare show of genuine bewilderment. This human who had just survived the most deadly poison in the known galaxy looked almost bored. He felt the stir of something he hadn't experienced in his long career. Uncertainty, wrapped in the unsteady tremor of all. Jackson's question hung in the air, daring anyone to respond. The room buzzed with a silent charge, every scientist present trying to grasp what they had just witnessed. Ark's tendril shifted with a barely perceptible tremor as he exchanged glances with Truck. "We cannot proceed until we understand what happened," Arnik finally said, turning toward the Crans, who Continued scanning Jackson initiate the deep genetic analysis. We must identify any anomalies in his genome. The crayons nodded, their segmented limbs moving in synchronized precision. They activated a series of glowing panels that projected a helix of shifting colors, a real-time representation of Jackson's genetic material. The entire assembly leaned forward, eyes locked on the spiraling data as it expanded and shifted with each pass of the scanner. Human Chuck said, his voice a touch more measured now. Your species' resilience defies logical boundaries. The poisons of the Saiyan bloom are known to erode even synthetic neural pathways. How can your nervous system withstand such destruction? Jackson tilted his head, a playful look in his eyes. You ever hear the saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger on Earth? That's not just a proverb, it's more of a daily mantra. A ripple of muted gas passed through the assembled researchers. A tall Sinizari scientist stepped forward, his skin a mesh of deep blue veins pulsing under a translucent membrane. Your species' evolutionary path must be beyond extreme, he said, his voice hissing softly. What kind of environment produces such robust beings? Jackson's expression shifted as if he was weighing how much to reveal. Well, we don't have the luxury of a stable world. Earth throws hurricanes, earthquakes, predator, and diseases at us like it's trying to get rid of us. And don't get me started on the viruses. Survive one pandemic and you gain a tolerance, survive 3. And you're practically immune to the common stuff. ARX tendrils tightened into a spiral, a gesture that indicated deep thought. A death world. Indeed, he whispered, almost as if speaking to himself. Our models could not have predicted this level of adaptation. The genetic readout on the whole C screen continued to pulse, the sequence breaking down into a series of colorful markers that represented Jackson's more unusual traits. Church moved closer, squinting as he examined an irregular strand that glowed with a sharp shifting hue. This marker, Church said, tapping the image with one of his clawed appendages, is not common to any known sentient genome. It appears resistant to the second compound. At a molecular level, have you encountered similar substances before? Jack Bro furrowed. Can't say I have. Unless it's similar to something we use back home, certain plants, animals. Some of them can be pretty nasty. Our ancestors learned how to survive them. Or they didn't survive at all. Chuck's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. The tension in the room slowly gave way to a rush of frenzied analysis. The crayons raced to compare Jackson's markers against the galactic genetic database, pulling up charts that span a dizzying range of known toxins and their biochemical counterparts. There is a pattern here, said one. Kellen, his voice quivering with discovery. It's subtle, but it matches with a theory that only a death world species would develop. Arnick turned sharply to the crayon. One tendril, gesturing for him to continue. The human's biochemistry suggests that their immune response isn't just reactive, it's preemptively adaptive, the Kellen said, all coloring his usually monotonous tone. It doesn't wait for cellular damage to respond, it anticipates and prepares for worst-case scenarios. This could explain how he metabolized the secrin toxin before it could cause harm. Jackson shifted his weight, folding his arms as he watched the flurry of alien curiosity turn into palpable excitement. The idea that his mere existence had sent a shockwave through this facility of learned minds was almost amusing. On Earth, was considered average, a guy who liked hiking, working out, and occasionally trying weird food. Yet here he was, a puzzle that cracked the laws of biology wide open. So what's next? Jackson asked, breaking their rhyme. More tests, more samples. I'm game if it means we get answers. Chuck's eyes gleamed with newfound respect. We must proceed with utmost caution. If your species holds the key to understanding immunity on this scale, it could revolutionize medicine. Across a 100-star systems, no pressure, Jackson said. Smirking, but beneath the humor he felt the weight of the moment. Whatever secrets his biology held, they were about to be pried open by an eager galaxy, and who knew what doors that would open or close? Arek's gaze shifted to Jackson, eyes filled with a mix of hope and calculated intrigue. Prepare yourself, human, we're just beginning. The lab hummed with a renewed energy as Jackson found himself the epicenter of the most intense research session Mara's Rage had ever seen. Data streams cascaded across hollow screens, projecting his unique genetic markers in biochemical reactions in vibrant shifting patterns. Alien scientists and researchers, usually methodical to a fault, now operated with frantic zeal, racing to understand the enigma standing before them. If we can map this preemptive Immunity, said Shro, addressing the crowd as if he were a war general planning a battle. We could develop counteragents not just for toxins, but for plagues, bioweapons, anything that challenges life. His mandibles clicked with anticipation, sending shivers through the assembly. Jackson leaned back. Crossing his arms, he felt their eyes on him, not as a colleague anymore, but as a discovery. The excitement in the room was palpable, but he couldn't help but feel the undercurrent of danger. It wasn't just about studying him, it was about what they might do with what they found. Arnik moved closer, his tendrils twitching as he surveyed Jackson's expression. Human, he said, voice lower. Now you must understand the potential here. Your biology could shift the balance of power across civilizations. This could save millions or weaponize a select few. Jackson's smile faded. And that's why you need to be careful, he replied, glancing at the swirling models of his DNA. It's not just about what you can do with this knowledge, but what you should do. A heavy pause hung in the air, broken only by the quiet war of machines. The Cran's eyes, locked on their displays, finally spoke. We've isolated the anomaly, one said, a slight tremor in his segmented voice. It's linked to a protein structure, something adaptive reactive, a trait only conceivable in an organism exposed to extreme survival pressures. ARX tendrils coiled tighter. Prepare for them. Final phase, we need to see how this protein responds when isolated. Jackson raised an eyebrow. And what does the final phase involve exactly? Track step forward. It will involve direct exposure to synthesized compound stress simulations to push the limits of this protein's response, but he added, quickly noting Jackson's stiffening posture. We will ensure your safety, Jackson smirked. Though the humor didn't reach his eyes. Safety, right? They strapped him into a scanner chamber, its walls a lattice of transparent panels that displayed both his image and the storm of data about him. Churuk and Arnik watched from the console, their figures framed by a sea of anxious researchers. The first compound was released, a derivative of the second toxin, weakened, but potent enough to test the protein's adaptability. Jackson felt the burn immediately, a searing wave that crawled from his stomach to his head. His jaw clenched, muscles tensing as the chamber registered his elevated vitals. The protein's response, projected on the hollow screens, flared to life, a dazzling burst of activity as it identified and neutralized the threat. It's responding faster than anticipated, one Kellyan muttered, eyes wide. Chuck's mandibles spread in what Jackson recognized as an alien smile. Remarkable, he whispered. The second compound hit more aggressive, laced with enzymes that mimic the invasive nature of bioweapons. This time, the pain was sharper, but Jackson felt his body adapting, almost as if the protein was learning, evolving in real time. Sweat beaded his brow, but he forced a grin at the scientists. Is that the best you've got? He quipped, though his voice carried a strain. Ark's tendrils twitched with worry, and he whispered to Chak, we should halt. No, Churro said, his eyes glued to the data. We witnessing history. The third compound was released, a last-ditch test, something none of the researchers had anticipated. Meeting, it was a synthesized blend of multiple toxins, a theoretical mixture designed only for simulation models. No creature had ever survived exposure to it. Jackson's eyes widened as he felt it hit his vision, blurred. His breath came in sharp gas, and for a moment silence claimed the room as every eye watched the pulsing data. Slow, then spike. He's one, Kellyan began, but his voice broke. The protein surged back to life, reacting in a violent burst of molecular shifts. Jackson felt the fire recede, a calm taking its place as his heart rate steadied. He exhaled deeply, a grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. Told you, he managed, voice hoarse. Humans stubborn as they come. The room erupted in a flurry of exclamations, hurried notes, and astonished whispers. Arnik approached the chamber, eyes filled with something akin to respect. We will document this, and we will tread carefully, he promised. Jackson met his gaze. Good. Because this isn't just human resilience you're looking at, it's our legacy of survival. Churek stepped back, the weight of realization sinking in. The galaxy had been handed a revelation, a glimpse into a biological fortress built by millennia of enduring a death world. And they knew now more than ever that the universe had yet to fully understand what humanity could endure.